This week on the OneCast, we're joined by Destin Demarion, EQ angler. He's going to talk about last season, what he thinks about the changes to BSS, and we'll see what else comes up.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's going to be a bad day.
There's always a pause. We don't know who's going to steal it or who's going to run with it. But welcome back to the OneCast, 47th episode that we've done.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Last couple have been with two Elite Series anglers. We had Paul and I can't believe I just did that.
And
Paul
Brad.
and Brad from the NPFL join us to talk about their season this year, some changes maybe coming, and just the continued culture growth there. Had a great time at that event. Our episode after this one will be us recapping our time down there at Stop 6 at Lake Lanier, where they crowned the AOI champion. Congrats to Todd Goad. If you didn't listen to our episode with him, go back and check that one out. He was able to do his job and finish that out. And then, Patrick Walters just winning everything this year. Between the Elites, the NPFL, he's had a heck of a year. So he was able to raise the trophy down there, the shield, and take home another $100,000. Before we bring Destin on, make sure you head to OneCastFishing.com. Use the code TheOneCast at checkout. Save yourself some money. Get some snagless jigs, long neck hooks. Soft plastics are dwindling, but I think you were getting ready to reorder, right? Or did you already?
Yeah, hopefully we'll have them restocked. The ones that are low or out, we've got a couple that are out. They should be restocked by hopefully the end of next week.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. I'm going to knock on this heavy table here. And
It's definitely wood.
If you're waiting on certain colors, I know he's gotten a bunch of messages and stuff. Make sure you keep your eyes open for that to come. You guys have anything before we get with Destin?
Hey, if you guys are in the Lake Norman area, Lake Norman, North Carolina, this will probably drop after the fact, but Special Operations Bass Anglers, check them out. We're going to be fishing a charity tournament up at Lake Norman for Chief Warrant Officer Cantrell, who passed away several years ago. So huge shout out to Special Operations Bass Anglers for hosting that annual event. It's always in memorial for a different fallen service member. So we'll be up there hopefully crushing some really not Lake Lanier size spotted bass, but there will be some spotted bass caught. So, and I just have to give ourselves a pat on the back. We don't ever do that. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of logistical planning to stay consistent in the podcast world. And you know what? I'm going to give us a pat on the back because, like you guys said, episode 47. So appreciate everyone following along with us. It means everything. And without everyone's support and viewership and all that stuff and friendship, we wouldn't do this. We couldn't do this. So
yeah. You're right. And I think our goal at the beginning of the year was to release an episode every single week, and we have done that so far.
That's right. And
we're on track to finish it up by the year. And I know we're going to bring Destin on. I don't remember when he came on. I don't remember if that was before the Classic or after. He might.
It was
remember.
before.
It was the first
episode 5 or something.
Yeah, first 5 episodes he was on.
He was very early on. So glad to get him back. We said we were going to bring him back to talk about the EQs. Like Trey said, there's a lot of logistics that go into what we've done, and we've figured it out. We've struggled along the way, but we're making it happen. I was late tonight because I went and looked at a house and last second, and it happens. But we're here. We're recording. 47th week in a row. We're going to bring you an episode, and let's grab.
Yeah, let's bring Destin on.
Without further ado.
Hello, guys.
What's going on, Destin Demarion with his awesome angler tan?
I heard that whole thing. Congrats, 47th episode. That is impressive. You guys are grinding away.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
it is. It's a show.
It's a grind like Lake Norman's going to be next week.
It's a yeah, it will be. Thanks for sending me.
Embrace the grind at Lake Norman, man.
That's
yeah,
right.
Appreciate all those waypoints, Destin. I won't tell Pete.
Oh yeah.
Well, you got Destin's. I got Craig's.
Oh, here we go.
No, Destin, we're glad to have you back. You, like we said, you were somewhere like episode 5. While we get rolling, I'm actually going to pull it up and look because now I'm super interested. But how are you doing, man? How's everything going?
Pretty good. Just getting back to the normal day-to-day family life, work, grind. I mean, I don't know if we talked about it a little bit, but it just snowed last night, which is kind of like back to the reality of the northern seasons coming. and our fishing season dwindling.
I know we were talking about it before we started, but the cold weather, we're talking, the rut for whitetail deer hunting and stuff like that. But I haven't been in the woods a single time. You don't even hunt anymore. I know Pete's getting ready to go out this weekend. Ben hunts. It's hard to do though when the water's open and your boat's ready to go, isn't it?
Very hard, especially being a mile and a half from putting my boat in on Lake Erie. So anytime we get a little bit of reprieve, I'm out there, even if it's like an hour in the evening before dark in the fall. I'll do what I got to do. But we went out this past weekend. I took a couple of my buddies, my one team partner that we're fishing the team championship together here in a few weeks. But we absolutely destroyed them. It took us a little bit to really like get on good, consistent bite. We caught good ones just scattered around, and then we got on one of my good spots that I found in college, actually shore fishing. And we sat there and caught them like every cast for like an hour. And when I dropped them off for a wedding, and I went back out and caught them pretty much every cast for the next hour.
Did you send him pictures for that hour while he was?
I did, yeah. The whole time they were driving back to Ohio. Yes.
I got to give you guys massive credit. So if you know anybody that's like a serious competitive angler like Destin, and there's a lot of them out there, of course, but I'm really terrible at it. Plus I suck. So when you take pictures of your fish, you do a really good job at only having the sky in the background. Like you do that, like lean down. Here's the picture. I'm all holding them up like, hey, look at the terrain behind me. You can totally find out where I'm fishing. But you guys do such a great job at that. I don't know if that's on purpose, but I got to give you kudos.
You're doing it all wrong if you're doing it that way. You put them in the live well, and then you go to some random place on the lake.
Someone else's spot, right?
Exactly. And then,
just like the memes say.
Yeah.
I mean, you see how it is like on Jordan and lakes where there's a lot of pressure. Erie's the same way, man. Like if you take a picture, there's a lot of very distinguishable land features up around there, and if it's there, they'll be
like, ooh, I know that lighthouse.
52 guys sitting on your hole the next day, if they're not already following you because you have a wrapped boat. But
yeah,
well, that's number one right there. Yeah. Thankfully, this time of year, this is my favorite time.
Yep.
Specifically, the spring is great. I love fishing the spring. However, this time of year, not many boats out.
That's when
everybody's hunting.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's put their boat away for the winter, and we'll go out until. I mean, we went out till New Year's Eve one year.
Wow.
Yeah. I
we
think
caught 180 on New Year's Eve 2 years ago. I think 2 or 3.
I remember that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's good. You can catch them until you just can't put your boat in anymore. Really. I mean, they're there. You just hope it's not super muddy and blown out.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing that's going to kill it. That's about it. But right now, it's been clear. I mean, it's probably muddy after this wind this last few days, but we're going to try to get out a couple days here this weekend.
Are now in the, because you don't really have an off season, and I don't think any competitive angler really has an off season, but in the cold,
the northern winter will do that though.
Yeah. Well, are you still running guided trips in the cold weather? Are you?
Yeah, like I had 2 this weekend. The one guy, he canceled because of the weather or something, but the other guy, we're still going out for sure.
Fair weather
It's just hard to schedule this time of year because your days, you might get 1 or 2 days that you can go out during a week. So to schedule it far in advance, it's really hard to plan for that.
Yeah.
Whereas the springtime, you got more protected fishing, in the bay, you can always do that, which you can do that now, but I mean, this time of year, I want to be out in the lake.
Yeah, that's where you catch them big old fat girls out there on the lake, man. I do miss that.
Destin Chubby chasing around.
You gotta get back up here.
I know. My old man's been up there whacking them the last couple of weeks and sending pictures, and it's like
total.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
I was wondering if he's been getting out.
Yeah, they've been on a pretty good crankbait bite, and he got into him pretty good. Actually, super shallow not that long ago, which he had never done before, even though I've been telling him don't be afraid to go shallow. But they got into him last week or something on one of our spots, like 5 foot of water. So don't be afraid to go shallow in the fall, people.
Yeah, no kidding.
If the bait's there, the fish will be there.
Don't be afraid to put a GPS tracker on Destin's boat like your dad did.
I've got like 3. Every time I see Destin, I drop an air tag in his boat. I got like 15 of them in there, just in case one dies.
So before we jump into the 2023 recap, talk about what you got coming up here in December, man.
Yeah, so Funny enough, I only fished one tournament in the team thing. I was a substitute for my buddy Tyler, who we usually fish team stuff, but I was gone too much. And we qualified for the team championship. So we're going down to Harris Chain here in a few weeks.
Isn't that where
I'm hoping to get my new boat all rigged and ready to take for that tournament. But I still have my other one until then. But
okay?
Hopefully we can get it going.
Nice. So go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
No, so team BASS, right?
Yeah. So it's another way to get the classic. So if you win this, there's like a fish off. I don't understand how that works, especially because Tyler's not gonna have a boat. But the fact that we make it, we'll figure something out. I got a lot of friends down there. I'm sure we can borrow one. But then there's a fish off. If you win the tournament, the top 6 teams or something do a fish off on the last two days, I think.
Yeah.
And then that one person who wins, that's a classic berth, right? Yeah.
That's how Matt Robertson
Yep.
made the classic, I think, his
first time, yeah.
Okay.
They used to provide boats for the co's for that, but they might not do that anymore with how the
They might. I'm not
economy
sure.
and everything is.
Yeah, probably not with the way things
because
are right now. But
I thought with the team, I thought they provided one for that, and then if you won as the co-angler, they provided a boat for you to use for the classic as well. I don't know if they still do that. It's been a while since I looked.
Yeah, I don't.
It's all changed so much that who knows what it is now.
You were right at one
if Tyler
point.
beats me, he's going to take a bass tracker to the classic.
Hey, he can take mine if he wants to, and then I can say my boat's been in the classic.
Hey.
Brand new transducer, bro. I broke it off at Lake Lanier, so we're good to go. So he can take this one. Yeah.
Trey harnessed his inner John Cox and was trying to go up the river to see what John was doing and found a log.
Yeah. Well, that log, I thought it was going to move out of the way, but clearly it said, no, I'm standing my ground. And but I have to give.
So you played chicken with a log. And
I did. Yeah. Yeah. It knocked the cluck out of me. So, but yeah, I have to give Hammond's Bait Shop down in Lake Lanier, man. They were phenomenal, and they knew that not that we were a part of the MPFL, but we were down there supporting our mission and theirs, and they were really good to me. So I have to give them a huge shout out. So if you're ever in the Lake Lanier area,
great.
Yeah, they're awesome.
An excellent tackle shop.
They are
the best spotted bass, like blueback, herring lake stuff around.
I've never seen so many soft plastics in one store.
And you know exactly what colors you need to get because they're not in stock.
Yep.
So, that's how I always shop at a store like that.
Yeah.
What else they have? Okay, there's one pack. Grab that.
You got it in the back.
Yeah. What you got in inventory? Nothing.
One thing about Lanier and Destin, you fish it a few times, I'm sure.
Yeah, a couple times.
The number of dang brush piles on that lake, because the last day Trey did a media ride along with Stephanie Hempel Pellerin, and I rode with Hunter Bogman for the last day of the tournament. And just like, I could not believe how many brush piles, natural and I'm sure a lot of man-made, are in that lake. It was like every point had 7 on it.
Oh yeah.
You almost have to.
It almost makes it harder because it's everywhere. You know? The places where there's not as much of it, it's easier to like hone in. But when it's everywhere, you really got to like weed through a lot to find, the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, I put the boat in on Hartwell, and not that this is a freaking Lake Lanier recap, but I put the boat in on Hartwell before Ben and Pete got down there, and I was like, where's the water at? Because there's more brush piles than there are water on this lake. It's crazy, man. It's like, how do you fish it? Like, how do you know where the big ones at versus the small ones are? It's just time on the water.
Fish them.
Yep.
Yeah, you just got to go out and do it. I mean, I fished the Open at Hartwell last year. That was my best tournament, and I just had to run a lot of it. I found the ones that were holding bigger fish, and that's usually how I ended up catching some good fish.
Yeah.
In that type of scenario, for everyone listening out there, kind of how do you break it down with that many brush piles? Because are you going to, for instance, you weed through some, you're catching small fish, you go to a place, you catch a couple of, are you looking for an area that are holding bigger fish and you just fish in that area with brush piles, or individual brush piles and making huge runs across the lake? Or
I prefer not to have to run a lot, like a big area, because I'm wasting time. Like, I like to break it down. Like, I find a section of the lake, if it's if they're biting in that section, especially in the fall. I think sections a lot of times will pop off just based on turnover and things like that. That just the fish are biting more active in those areas. So at Hartwell, I just picked basically a third of the lake where I saw better watercolor. I saw more active fish activity, a lot of moving around, and when you threw a bait on them, they were more aggressive towards it. Mm-hmm. So oxygen level, stuff like that, whatever it was, but there was a delineation between, that section of the lake and the rest. I found that and that was where the tournament was won,
Okay.
I watched, they had the live the last day, and it was the exact same area. The guy that won was fishing. We both started within 100 yards of each other in the morning the first day.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I know these guys did too, just being down there, like not even fishing. You just learn those blueback herring lakes, like they're a different beast, man. Obviously, John Cox from Florida did what he did best, but everyone else was targeting big spots, and you're absolutely right. Like there were certain areas of the lake they just weren't producing. So that's just time on the water though, and experience. So
and just like traditionally certain areas of the lake where they have tournaments and stuff and just dump a lot of the fish. Like there's more of a population in some of the areas, and just the way the lakes neck down and open up, and where there's a little bit more current from wind and stuff, is just going to concentrate them. And just seasonally it changes, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So to recap, you said that was your best finish. Was it
not this season.
2 years ago. Yep. Yeah. But this season, 2023, just a quick schedule recap. Started at Lake Eufaula in Alabama, went to Toledo Bend, which is in Louisiana, Texas, right on the border there. Then you came up here to Bugs Island, which is in North Carolina, Virginia border.
You got to ride along with me.
Yeah, I rode with you for a day. Wheeler Lake in Alabama, the other Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma, St. Lawrence River, Watts Bar, Lake of the Ozarks, and then rounded it out at the Harris Chain. So I know you didn't have the finish that you wanted. Obviously, you wanted to be up there in that top 9, but you had not a horrible season. You were kind of middle of the pack, and
right.
I don't know, how'd you feel about the year? Disappointed, I'm sure, but did you learn a lot? Or
yeah, I feel like this year more than ever, I've just seen a distinct shift in what's working and what's like the trend of things. I think more so this year that I've noticed just how dominant forward-facing sonar is everywhere we go, and even the Harris Chain and places traditionally where it might have not been. Even Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma, which traditionally I wouldn't think of it as that kind of place. I mean, our tournament was won there. The NPFL was won, chasing bait around in Eufaula, Oklahoma. It just seemed like a little bit different in that sense than it has been. But I'd say that trend has kind of been going that way, but more evident this year that I've seen, that and really, I think where I've went wrong was not fully committing to doing that, and just kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I don't think you can do that anymore. I think you got to really either commit to it, or you got to John Cox it, and you got to fully, commit to the, that shallow up the river type bite.
When you say commit, do you mean commit like each tournament? You make that decision during practice, saying this is the strategy, or are you saying for like the entire season, my option A should be doing this, and if I can't figure it out, then I got to do something else, obviously. But
a little bit of both. I would say your best chance to be consistent, if you look at the guys that have made the EQs and the other guys that did fairly well and are right there too. Just seeing them out on the water when I'm passing in a tournament and practice, you've got to commit to doing that. Whether it's first when you put your boat in the first day of practice, you start panning around. Like you got to just be in that mode where you got to be fishing like that.
Yeah, and you're not the first one who's been doing this for a while at all levels, up to the highest level, that have said like, I need to commit now. Dave Lefevre fairly well. I've fished against him and talked to him a lot growing up in Pennsylvania, and him being there in Erie. And that was one of the things, like when he did his year recap, he's like, I'm spending this entire fall on forward facing sonar because it's what I have to do. Like it has to be a tool in your arsenal that you're comfortable using
anymore. Yeah. You just can't without the tournament lining up to John Coxett, and you being that kind of fisherman, and like that's your style. The only other way to be super consistent is to commit to that 100%. Unless you're at a fishery where you have a lot of history and knowledge and understanding of how the fish move. Without that, say you're at the Grass Potomac River or something, like a place where I don't think it's going to help as much, but it'll surprise you. Like a place like that, someone's going to find them that way. Someone's going to figure out how to catch them that way.
And that's what
pilings and stuff.
We talked about that with one of the BPT's events is coming here to the Chowan River, which traditionally guys do a lot of fishing in the river itself, or when they're offshore, it's very specific to like humps and stuff. And I made the call as soon as they announced the schedule. I'm like, somebody's going to win that in the Sound on forward-facing sonar because they're going to find big fish, because there are big fish over in that river system that are not molested.
Oh, yeah.
They haven't seen 1,000 frogs. They haven't seen 1,000 swim jigs, Texas rigs, flipping baits, all of that. One of them guys is going to find them, and they're going to lay the wood to them, and they're going to come in with a giant sack. And you're right. There's people that have committed to it. And that's the way they fish, and we don't have an issue with it. Like we don't really get into the forward facing sonar debate, but like it's a tool, and you either learn to use that tool, or you kind of get left behind. And it's the same as when folks started using 2D and then down imaging came out, and then when side imaging came out. I remember when side imaging came out, everybody said we're going to kill fisheries. The fisheries are all going to die. The fish can't hide offshore anymore. You're going to know where all the brush piles are. And it really didn't impact it. So it will be curious with bass doing the studies now on how it impacts fish and things like that. But have you committed more time this fall then in the off season, quote unquote, to kind of get more comfortable with that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with it. And even on the elites, I would kick myself and be like, why didn't I just do that the whole time? It would frustrate me when I'm like, okay, I went and fished, and did something that I would normally do, like a pattern or something like that. Whereas I find out, at Lake Fork, Patrick Walters is turning his transducer up and catching them up in the timber, suspended in the fall, which, I survived that tournament, had a good finish. But, it was the difference between catching a bunch of fish and just scraping and clawing to get, a $12,000 check or whatever,
When you if you ask the guys, that fish the EQs with you, do they have the same mentality? Like, were there a lot of guys that were like 1 foot in, 1 foot out with forward facing sonar, or?
So like I travel with some guys that are probably like just a notch generation older than me. So traditionally shallow fishermen, jig fishermen, that kind of stuff. A lot of them are literally like fed up with it. They don't want to fish anymore. They don't want to learn that way. They don't want to learn how to fish that way, which I think I'm fortunate in that sense. Like I'm not in that boat in the sense of like, I kind of grew up in between. I grew up where the electronics was just kind of starting, where when I started my career, it was about learning how to fish, patterns and stuff, but also when the electronics kind of were booming, as things were changing the whole way through. So, I like the electronics. I think it's a good thing for the sport. Anything that's helping you catch fish is a good thing. It's just something new to learn. It's just something new. It does change your style of fishing. Believe me, I think it's more fun to sling a chatterbait around shallow or throw a frog and do that kind of stuff. But I know in tournament, the best thing to do is to do what's going to catch the biggest fish. So if that's not doing it anymore, you got to adjust. You know?
I think a lot of people, there's so many naysayers against forward-facing sonar, and they can be, they can be opposed to it all they want. But I think like a lot of people need to remember that there's a very, very, very small percentage, and I mean a super small percentage of national tournament anglers that if they're not using it, if they don't have that tool in their kit bag, they're at a huge disadvantage. And until they make a rule where you can't have it, or you're limited to how many transducers you have, or whatever the case may be, you're paying, or your sponsors are paying for you to enter into this competitive environment. Why wouldn't you put yourself at the same playing level as everyone else, But everything gets wrapped around tournament angling and not just like angling in general. So, but yeah, man. So the first event was where, Pete? Eufaula, Alabama. What was up with that event, man? How'd that go?
Pretty decent, I actually caught them mostly flipping.
Did you?
And I did catch two offshore, like in brush piles and stuff, with live scope, live active target. But I was flipping, and I figured out how to get they were moving up, but then the weather changed, and the ones that were up kind of stayed, but like a lot of the big females kind of backed off, or it just depended on the area that you're in.
Yeah.
But I did get creative. I was fishing some areas that were getting a little pressure, so I put a little owner flashy accent. I screwed it into the Senko that I was flipping, and it was like a light switch. I mean, boom, they'd start swimming away. You'd flip a Senko in there, they wouldn't touch it. You'd flip another bit, they wouldn't touch it. You'd flip that Senko with that spin. A little bit dirty water, too. You just kind of like pull it just a little bit, boom, start swimming away. 3-pounder.
You posted that on YouTube, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Because I remember taking a snapshot of watching you, and I sent it to him, and I was like, "Oh, look who I'm watching!" And I noticed that technique, and I don't own any of those like little flashy deals that screw into the end of a stick bait, but I was like, "Wow, I learned."
I have
something.
like a 1,000 pack in my boat, and every once in a while I put one in.
Anytime something, Pete's like, I'll buy the whole store.
No, I already had them because I have used them like in Erie and stuff on a Ned rig, especially. Like you'll get
that's
those.
a good little way to catch them.
Yeah, anybody that's listening, there's a little inside. Like if you're having a tough bite and they want that finesse stuff, a lot of times you can throw that flasher on there and you'll start picking up bites when it's slow. And it might be the difference between catching one every cast and catching one every 10 casts or whatever. But that's when I really used it. But I never thought about it on stick bait till Destin showed it.
Is that something that reflects well or gives you feedback on forward-facing sonar if you're using it?
Yeah, you'll see it. I mean, if you're throwing stick bait, but I mean, I was fishing dirt.
Yeah.
I wasn't using it. I had one sight fish that saved me the second day. I rolled in there. My co-angler's like, "Oh, we fished in here yesterday. We couldn't get it to bite." And I was like, "He's right there." And I roll right in at the end of the day. I was like, "Oh, he's still there." He's like, "No way. My dude flipped on that fish like for 2 hours, never got him bite. First cast with that spinner. I watched it go down. He went, ate it. Got it."
Can't catch another man's fish.
That's right.
Well, it's literally, people have been fishing it for 2 days. Like, there was only a few fish in this little area, like they were sight fish. And I was like, there's no way it's still there. I was like, let's just hope and a prayer, and I'll run in there and catch one. 3-pounder, throw in the boat. It's like, thank you, Lord.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's just the little details like that. And it's so hard sometimes you get in that groove of like, this is what's going to catch them, and I got to throw these baits, and these are the colors at this lake, and this is what's going on this time of year. Like, a lot of times, my one roommate, Craig, Pete has met him.
Yep.
He's out there. You know what I mean? And
Craig, I love you, Craig. If you listen,
and he and I work
polar
well
opposites.
Yes, because we're completely different.
Completely different.
So, I'm like the structured, like military type, like that. You know what I mean? Like, I got a plan, I got a mission. We're gonna do this. You know what I mean?
Not Craig.
And he's like, just like, I'm just going to go out there. And he's like, yeah, I tied on this thing and blah, blah, blah. I threw. I was like, why the heck did you throw that thing? And he's like, yeah, they were eating. I caught 7-pounder first cast, a 6-pounder next cast. Why'd you even throw that? Like, it makes no sense. And he's like, I just felt like doing it. I'm like, all right. So it's good. Like his mind can come up with some interesting stuff.
Yeah, Craig. When I met Craig,
that one was me.
That
one was me. I showed him that one.
Destin, not that he warned me, but he was like, "You're gonna like Craig," and I'm like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Yeah, he's nothing like me," and I was like, "Yeah, okay." Nothing like Destin. Completely. If you took Destin and thought of the complete opposite, that's Craig. Good dude. But I don't want to go tournament by tournament because that would take forever. Yeah, but I'm going to punch you in the gut and then we're going to lift you up. So, what was your worst event this year, and what did you learn out of that?
Oh gosh, I think honestly St. Lawrence or Harris Chain.
I think it might have been St. Lawrence because I was shocked.
Pete's fat checking.
Yeah.
He's really.
Well, you can pick one of those two because you struggled on both.
That one was frustrating as heck, just because like it was one of those ones like I don't know why, it's not coming together because like I was getting the bites and I couldn't put them in the boat for some reason. Just one of those days. I mean, you have them.
That was St. Lawrence?
Yeah, I guess that's St. Lawrence.
Yeah, he was 139 at St. Lawrence.
Yeah, so that one was interesting because, you're a northern swing guy. I mean, you obviously fish all over the country, but and correct me if I'm wrong, when you think of your strong suit, smallmouth fishing would be your strong suit. No?
Yeah. I mean, I think smallmouth or spotted bass, which to me are about the same thing.
About the same, yeah.
So what was going on in that tournament? Like, you couldn't keep them buttoned or you couldn't... Or like what was going on?
Yeah, so like the first morning, the first good fish bite, I see it. It's like a 5-pounder. It follows a spy bait out, and it would follow it, wouldn't commit, and go right back to where it was. So I was like, okay. I threw a hair jig over there. First cast, watch it, eats it, swims forward, snap. My line snapped. I was like, what in the heck? I was like, I just retied this whole leader, and it was like, I made sure it was good. It's like, okay, whatever, just one fit. Well, that was the second bite. I had a bedfish right before that, like a 4.5-pounder, and I got that one right to the boat at tail walk and just threw it. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, yeah, no big deal. Then go right around the corner, that other one. It's like, all right, we're good. We're just going to keep going. I'll go to another spot. Went to there. My co-angler caught one over 5, I was happy. I mean, it was on top water, so that was pretty cool. And my co-angler practice partner, he was with his pro on the spot that we were fishing, which, I mean, we both fished it, so, I mean, I wasn't mad or anything. It's not his fault. And he took his guy there because he didn't have anything. So I was like, crap, I can't fish there. He's on the juice. So I left there, went back and fished some of my stuff, and for some reason, they were following, hair jig, stuff like that. But if I could get them before they got too close to the boat and I could kind of like back off, I'd throw like a tube or something at them real far away and just kind of leave it there and they'd eat it, come off. I was like, what in the heck?
Those are the most frustrating days, and they've all happened to us. The one that happened to me the most was out at Jordan Lake, a little club tournament. All week, I got off work early, and I was pre-fishing, and I had this spot all week. I wouldn't fish it very much, but I go make sure they're still there. Every time I go there, 3 or 4-pounder. And I'm there on tournament day. Of course, on Saturdays, the fish don't bite the same, so it was a little slower, and there was traffic out there. But I literally had 4 or 5 fish come off. They broke my line. They just came off the hook. I was fishing a drop shot. It was so frustrating. I was literally sitting down in my passenger seat, just dragging that thing along until one would bite because I know they're there, and then the line would break, and I'm like, well, it's just one of those days. That's why I'll never use that type of line again.
And but when you talk about momentum, and we talk about it all the time, like momentum when you're being successful, it works the same the other way. Like a lot of my bad tournaments have come from a start of the day like Destin just talked about, and it's just like steamrolls. I think I texted you one time in the middle of a tournament and I was like, bro. Like, how do I get out of this? Because I had fish after fish after fish come unbuttoned at the boat, and I'm like, I can't keep a fish pegged, and I'm about to break every single rod I have off the gunnel. Like, what do you do? And you were like, just sit down for a minute and chill. So then I started doing that, and like your advice really helped. But once that negative starts going, it can kind of roll.
Yeah, you don't want to let that snowball.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I call it it's a mental reset. So like you got to like take yourself out of that situation, reset. So sometimes I'll take a knee and fiddle with my graphs, and I'll stand up, like, new mindset, different thing going next quarter essentially of the game.
Yep.
So it's like move on. There's just little cues and stuff you can do mentally to just like move past that. But yeah, I feel your pain. There's sometimes it just doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You can't explain it, and that wasn't the one breaking the line. That was one time. Like my line's awesome. Like I don't distrust my line, so
Yep.
I don't want to get that twisted. There was one tournament in my career early on that line was a huge issue.
Yep.
I got 3 bad spools of the leader line, and it cost me winning a Southern Open.
Ooh.
Early in and I'll never use that brand again, and I won't talk about that. But like those are the experiences that like, well, you can't change it. It obviously happened for a reason. You don't know that reason. It might stink, but you just gotta keep rolling on. What else can you do? I mean, being mad, being, wallowing in your pity, like, how's that going to be helpful in moving forward? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me feel better.
Yeah.
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. Like you notice your whole mentality, your whole demeanor changes. You start missing bites because you're not dialed in because all you're thinking about is the one that you lost a minute ago. Like it just unravels the entire day, and that's why I hit you up that day. I'm like, I need to talk to somebody, and like I was like, I'm hitting Destin up, and you were like, you just need to reset, dude. And so I sat down. I think I drank a bottle of water, maybe ate a beef jerky stick or something, and like went back to it, and I ended up with a limit. I think I cashed a check, but still, it was like,
heck yeah,
you just you have to figure out what works for you in those situations, and
right, it's different for everybody.
But we talked about the mental side with everybody that comes on, and that's why I wanted to ask you about your worst for the year, because I find those days are usually when you learn the most. Like it may not be a technique or what you were doing, but it might be the mental side of the game that you learn, like taking that reset and how to do that and what works for you to get back into it. But those you tend to learn more from those than you do the ones when you go out and you start whacking them and you finish where you think you're going to finish or you win. The tournaments I've won, I've never learned anything. I went out there and said, this, I'm going to catch them, and I caught them that way that day. It's not like I figured something out and picked at it. Not that can't happen. Like we've seen it happen at all levels. Somebody figures something out and it goes to show. So I did look. St. Lawrence was your worst. You were 129 there, and then 127 at the Harris. So that momentum again, you kind of finished a little bit rough. But what was your best one this year?
Probably Eufaula, Alabama, I think.
Okay, yeah, that was in the 30s, I believe.
Close that one or Watts Bar. I mean, honestly, Watts Bar was my best tournament. It just it didn't. It was another unfortunate circumstance as far as things happening that are just you can't predict or out of your control. But I mean, I felt like I was on a very consistent bite, and I got the right bites to have a very good tournament and put them in the boat. It's just one of those fluke crazy things.
That was at Watts Bar.
Yeah. So
can you talk about
I had
that?
an 18-inch smallmouth that I caught. I think it was my second or third fish the first day. I measured it twice. I mean, it was a nice fish. Kept it, didn't think twice about it. I caught 6 more keepers probably throughout the day, more 2-pounders. Ended up making a blunder. It could have went either way. I mean, I caught a shaky head fish, caught deep later in the day. It called one, but I knew it was kind of risky. It was towards the end of the day. I didn't know if I'd catch another keeper. So I was like, yeah, I'll take a chance. I would have called it 2 more times, so I had to keep that one. Lost that fish. And then when I got to the tanks, couldn't measure the 18-inch smallmouth, threw it back, lost a pound. So I think I missed a check by 7 ounces in that one.
Yeah, I remember watching that one, and I felt the pain for you on that. Like, you had 5, you showed the smallmouth, and then watched weigh in and saw 4 fish, and I was like, what in the heck? What do you mean 4 fish?
I was fishing with John Garrett's grandfather the first day.
Okay.
And he's like, dude, you're going to be in the top 5 or top 10 or something. And he's like, you're having an awesome day. He's like, I haven't seen this kind of weight all week. And I was like, it's just my day. It's working. It changed quite drastically.
Yeah, it took
by the
us
time we got back. I had to throw back a couple 2-pounders that I couldn't keep because the smallest fish was dead. And I could have thrown the smallmouth back and had 2 more other fish to replace it. So,
for everyone listening on Watts Bar is what, Tennessee?
Yeah,
Tennessee. Smallmouth have to be, they have to be 18 inches on that body water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the rule of thumb? And for everyone, like, fish lose weight and fish shrink in your live well.
100%.
It happens.
Yeah.
They'll regurgitate food, and then, stress and all the other things, like, it just happens. But for you, when you put a fish on the board, do you like to have a rule of thumb where the tail is over that, whatever it is, or are you, I mean, clearly
I made sure it was at least 1/8 of an inch over.
So it'll shrink over 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah. I mean, it also just depends. Maybe I didn't have the fish perfectly on the board or something, although I did manipulate it like 2 or 3 times to make sure, it was closed mouth and all that. But I mean, it was the same for a lot of guys. When it happened to me, another guy came up. He's like, dude, he took your smallmouth too? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I measured mine 10 times when I got back, and he threw mine back. So, I mean, I'm not blaming him, but it's something you need to consider. If it's that close, is it worth that risk?
Sure.
And that's a hard one. I know a lot of people, theirs were thrown back. It might have been 17.999, like, if not 18. I mean, that's true. That's true.
I mean, it's easy. It can be easy to blame the guy or gal that's bumping the fish and stuff like that. I know these sanctioned tournament organizations. I have to say that sanctioned tournament organizations do a very good job at making sure that they keep the utmost integrity. But I'm sure it crosses people's mind where it's like, dang, dude, like, is he sure he measured that correctly? You know what I mean? But
you can. So the issue I think that I should have done was, one of my roommates that were staying, there was a bunch of us staying at a house together. He was behind me in line, and after the fact, he's like, dude, you should have stopped the tournament and had the tournament director come back. Because he's like, 2 more people that were EQs guys had the tournament stopped, and they let them keep the fish. So
interesting. Okay.
I guess that might be my error, or I don't know.
Well, that's a good piece of advice for anybody that's looking.
I was just accepting that he tried, and it was, didn't work.
You made the assumption that he was going to do the job and it was going to be upheld for everybody, and found out that potentially.
He did his job consistently, and he tried. Like, he tried for a long time, and it is what it is.
I should say I'm not trying to blame him. What I mean is, like, you assume that nobody was gonna look for that courtesy, or if you want to call it that, because I've seen that happen.
Well, we're all gonna try to, like, make sure, if you bring the fish in, you want it to measure, you think it measured, you're gonna do everything you can to make sure that it did.
That is crazy. Because now I'm thinking from a legal perspective. What if this wasn't a tournament? You catch an 18-inch smallmouth out there, then the game warden comes up 5 hours later and measures your fish at 17.9.
It'd be different, because Tennessee rules are different than bass rules.
Yeah.
Bass, you fan the tail. In Tennessee, you can pinch the tail.
Yeah.
Oh,
got it. Okay.
That's interesting.
So, I guarantee all of ours would have been Tennessee legal, but it doesn't matter. It matters what the bass rules are.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, which is interesting that it's different, but rules are different. That's why it's important the tournament rules, the state rules.
Yeah.
It's really tough, and we saw
We'll
it
have
with
different
Harvey
length
too.
limits too than the state, just based on they don't want a bunch of 12-inchers being brought in. Like,
Well, I guess
if it's a fish where you can catch them, sometimes they'll just up the limit size, which is normal.
But even if you pinch the tail, like if you're just fun fishing or you're going to keep them, right? Because people do keep smallmouth, I guess, sometimes. But, it's legal. You catch I don't know what Tennessee is. I assume you can have 5 in a day there, too. But
Not smallmouth.
If you have, I don't know how many you can have in Tennessee.
You could there.
Depends on the lake, yeah.
Fishery, yeah. Most of them, yeah, you can.
Regardless, that part's irrelevant. But if you pinch the tail and it touches 18 and you throw it in the live well, and then 8 hours later you get checked by the law dog, and it's 17.9. Like that is, I'm gonna start taking photos on my bump board.
I can say I have never seen a pinch-tail fish shrink to where it was under the limit. I've seen it with fan-tailed fish, but I feel like if you pinch them and you get it, you can almost always still get it to get to that line.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah. So
I've only weighed in a short fish. Maybe you tried to, obviously, twice, two times, I think.
Okay.
2 or 3.
Did you haven't? Oh, go ahead.
One time was at Chickamauga. It was a similar situation. I had a fish that was dying. I was catching them good, so I was like, all right, I'll let it go, and I'll catch another one. I didn't catch. I caught another one that was like barely a keeper, and then when I got back, it didn't measure, so I lost that fish.
So we're talking about Watts Bar here? We talked about St. Clair, or was it St. Clair or St. Lawrence? St. Lawrence before. Did you have any throughout the 2023 season? Did you have anything happen to you that you've never experienced before, or like a 6 fish in your live well type situation? Did you have anything like that happen?
Other than the 18-incher that shrunk?
No, thankfully, but I have done that before. It's a lot easier than you think.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't have any of that. The fish measuring thing, I would say, was the biggest surprise, because you go back to the weigh-in and you're like, man, I had a great day. And you're like, what the heck just happened right now?
Yeah.
You go from having like 13 pounds to 4 for 9 something.
Or if you mac a deer on your way, that.
Oh yeah. Talk to us about that, man. So you just got the Dur Edge Dodge fixed not too long ago. What happened?
Oh, yeah. St. Lawrence, apparently that was a bad tournament for more reasons. In practice, coming back one of the days, hit a nice big old St. Lawrence upstate New York doe and took out the front side of the ram.
Did you guys eat?
Just finally got that fixed before heading to Watts Bar.
Yeah,
and then got the wrap fixed before Harris Chain in Atlanta, where we got it done at Z Details.
Yeah, so when it rains, it pours a little bit up in upstate New York, huh? But you know what, though? Like, I mean, that's just adversity and resiliency, you know what I mean? Like, and so that last tournament at the Harris Chain, obviously everybody knows that's where all the classic berths or the Elite Series berths and stuff were. I know we didn't want to talk tournament to tournament, but since that was the last one, were you confident going into that tournament or what?
I felt like I could catch some fish. Yeah, the last day or two of practice, I started to figure something out. I had found some areas that were definitely had some fish in them. They weren't getting fished very, very much, but it was a tough bite. Like, you had windows, very small windows to catch them. I kind of just was swinging for the fence. I mean, the only reason I went to that one was just to try to win. So I was taking some chances. And first day, it did decent. I think I flipped up like 12 pounds or something. And the second day, the areas I was fishing got blown out by the wind. So I tried to adjust and just could not land on them again, I guess.
Which lakes were you primarily focusing on down there?
I only fished Harris.
Okay.
I basically was like, I'm just going to spend my whole practice here. I know a lot of people were going far away. Some of my roommates were going far away and getting more bites. But I felt like if I could maximize my time, I could get some good bites and have a chance. And
I mean, that's the problem. Like, if you try to go down to a Popco or even up to like Griffin, it's like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. With all the canals.
I told myself I'd never lock. That's one thing, which I might change my mind on that. But I told myself at Harris Chain and Toho I'd never lock. I just figured it out without locking. Figure out on those lakes that you can go to without locking, so you can maximize your time.
Yeah,
The winning fish are always there. It's not always an easy bite. Sometimes it's super tough. But if you spend enough time and commit to it, just like we were talking about the live scoping and the active target stuff, then it's possible to find that needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
And I mean down there, I think you can fish 5 of the lakes without locking, right? I think so. You got Harris, where you want to.
Yeah, Harris, Little Harris, Eustis, Dora, Beauclair, Carlton.
Yeah.
Horseshoe, Denham. You can fish all those ones without locking.
Yeah, so you still have a pretty fair area that you can get into. But talking about challenges and committing, we know you're not committed yet to the EQs for next year. I know you got a lot on your mind with that. So we won't dive into the schedule or anything for 2024, but I do want to talk to you about the changes that they've made to the Open. So they've increased payouts, they've increased the spots they're paying out, entry fees. Did they increase entry fees? Yeah.
Yep. Entry fees by 200,
and then
live coverage.
They added the live coverage, which I think is a big deal, especially for the
sure.
EQs folks, and the return on investment for sponsors. And then I thought it was big when they changed the AOI payout to cover the first year's entries for the elites. That could be huge for whoever does qualify, to kind of take some of the burden off there of worrying about sponsor money and stuff. So with those changes, what are your thoughts? Good, bad, and different?
Before we get an answer to that, can I add on there? I'd like to know, because you fished the Opens before the EQ series started. Like, did you notice any major differences, attitudes, competition level with how it was set up this year? And then everything Pete said, how do you think that's going to go going forward?
Yeah, I think competition-wise, not much different. The fact that you are fishing that many in the travel and the amount of boats that we had, that was a little bit different, than when I made it through the Eastern Opens, when they split it just to 2 divisions. They had the Eastern and the Central. That's the year that I made it. It was like mostly a Southern schedule in the East, and we had one Northern tournament. Competition-wise, same. I mean, the year that I made it was all the FLW, top-tier FLW guys trying to bounce over to the elites.
Yeah.
Kind of when that stuff was getting dicey. So similar situation where you got a lot of FLW guys that just stopped, saw the writing on the wall, MLF now, and jumped in the Open. So you got some good competitors there, as well as all the local guys, which you always have, the regional local guys, and then, getting some elite guys always jumping in and fishing them. I don't think it was that much difference in the sense of the competition, other than just the breadth of it, just having so much more like an elite season, grueling 9 tournaments, starting early, finishing late, even later than an elite season typically would end, having that October Harris Chain tournament. So it was different in that sense. It was interesting. I'll say it's interesting. Not having as good a payouts and changing them now is a good thing. There's no doubt. That was probably the biggest gripe I heard from people was there's not enough money. Like when I was fishing the FLW tour or et cetera, like it's hard to justify because, an FLW tour or whatever, they paid 80 out of 150 guys. They're getting $5,000, $10,000 or more. Or on the elites, half the field is getting a $10,000 or more check. And then usually they pay down to, on the elites, like $2,500 check, down to 70 something, I think it was. So just a different situation as far as payouts and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people thought coming in, you could make a living doing that per se, where it's not really set up for that, but I'd say it's a little bit better in the sense now, the way that it's set up with the elite or the Opens, where you got the live coverage, it's more to sell to a sponsor for every tournament, not just the last 3. And then the entries didn't go up too much. I mean, it is significant over the course of 9 events, but the payouts went up about $1,000 probably per spot, like lower check, and they're paying more spots. I think they're paying 45.
Yep.
Yeah, I was
full field.
Hank. I guess is the guy who runs the Opens. He was on. I forget which podcast I was listening to. But he was like, yeah, it was basically an extra entry fee. When you add, right, it's $1,800, right? It's 9 times 200, so it's an extra entry fee. But all that money, apparently, for those additional entry fees, that's all going to payouts. So they're not taking a dime of that. That's where we get. That's where the money's from to pay, I guess, the Angler of the Year and pay more spots down and increase some of those.
Yeah. That's good too with the Angler of the Year money. Like that's also enticing because you have a good year. You can make another $45,000 if you win the points, which that's significant. It's like winning another tournament.
Yeah. So before we move into, I know we're going to talk a little bit about changes with the Major League Fishing format, but we're not going to talk about that. Okay. So you fish the elites, you fish the opens before, you fish the elites, and you fish the EQs. Do you based on your assessment of the EQs and having to fish all 9 opens now, do you feel like this is a better format that's setting guys up for success if they do qualify for the elites?
I think it is. Yeah, I think the structure of it is good. The idea is good because it is preparing you for that 9 tournaments all around the country, quick turnarounds, a lot of traveling, just being able to be in that lifestyle. And can you do that? I think it'll deter a lot of people from doing that just based on how much travel and how much really goes into this, especially if you're going to pre-fish. It's going to be 18, 19, 20 weeks on the road, just to do those 9 tournaments.
Oh, they did change. You just mentioned it because of pre-fishing. They did change the pre-fishing rules, I think, for the Open. So it's now 2 weeks off limits?
Yes. I think part of that is because there's some co-anglers, that we hung out with and had dinner with and fished a lot of them. And we talked about, why is there more co-anglers? And the one dude that I know, he's pretty knowledgeable and got a beat on things. He said because the local guys that normally fish the co-angler as a co-angler, when it comes around, they didn't want to fish it because they didn't want to have to stay off their lake for a month. So that was a big reason why I think they weren't getting the co-angler numbers. And I would assume this will help, only being off the water for 2 weeks. I would assume that would help with the co-angler numbers.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Do you think, and you don't have to answer this, but do you think that the EQs should be their own separate entity from the opens?
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that's coming next year based upon the writing on the wall, but nothing's been officially released yet, but those rumors are going around.
Yeah, I know there's been a bunch of speculation about it, so it'll be interesting to see.
Just like on that, again, I can't think of his last name, but Hank, who runs the opens, he said, yeah, there's going to be something different with the EQs in 2020. What is it?
Hank Weldon.
Weldon.
Yeah. He said in 2025, right? 2025, there will be another change, but that's for next year. So we'll see. I'm sure they'll keep changing it to get whatever they need, right, for their circuit and business. So
it'll be interesting to see where it goes. We talked to Destin, we've talked to Harvey, some other EQs folks, not on the show, but we've talked to them, and they all kind of said the same thing, like. With everything that we have on the line and that we've done to get to that point and all of that, the co-angler kind of detracts a little bit because you have to worry about them and their safety and they can ruin a day in a hurry if they say I'm not going out in that rough water. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot of added stress to that, and it's just. It just seems like it should go that way. I think everybody wants it to. So we'll see what Bass does. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of changes. The industry's in a weird place right now.
Hey, it gives us something to talk about.
It does. Yeah.
There's plenty to talk about between all the 3 circuits.
Yeah, I mean, it was we were actually, Dustin, we were struggling a little bit. Like we had guests lined out. We got that. We're like, man, it's
about a month ago.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what we're going to talk about, and my buddy Boyd has fixed that for us. So we got all kinds of stuff to talk about now.
Well, the opens
Boyd,
too. I mean, the opens have changed some things. It's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah. There's a lot.
The same opens thing about having it as a separate thing. I just wanted to add, like, I think a lot of people were a little irritated because I think the FLW Tour got like this. Because remember, they had like those FLW Tour like open type tournaments where locals would jump in, come in and take their checks, and they were getting irritated because they weren't fishing the whole season, paying the entries for the whole season like everybody else. They just come in and cherry pick on their home lake, which is like basically even a local buddy circuit kind of steers away from that because you have to have like this extra membership fee and you're paying extra per tournament to try to detract from people cherry picking certain tournaments that they know they're going to do good in. You know what I mean? So that's kind of frustrating a little bit, especially when, you know, guys like me or Harvey or any of the guys were committing and doing all 9 tournaments. And then you miss a check by 2 spots and 20 of the spots were locals that got checked, you know, like, that's kind of frustrating at times.
I think they tried to discourage some of that with, because it used to be if you just won an event, you went to the Classic. But it was either last year or the year before that you have to win the event and then fish the other ones in that division.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we saw that with Bugs Island this year.
9.
Yeah, old Powell went out there.
Yeah, Bugs Island. That guy did some damage. Yep.
Powell kept one.
He's dangerous there, very.
won the Open, and then the very next weekend went and won Collins, which is a big marina that has a big tour, and they do what they call their Top Gun tournament. He went and won that on the Chowan River with his partner. So in 2 weekends, he won the BSS Open in that check. Then he went and won $75,000 in a local tournament, qualified for the Classic. So Powell, man, that was pretty cool. You had a heck of a 2-week run there. Yeah. And looking forward
He's won a lot of money in Virginia and North Carolina.
Yes, he has. And I had never heard of him, but as soon as he got in the lead, all of my buddies that have been down here are like, oh yeah, we've donated a lot of money to that guy over the last 20 years.
But you know what, I'll tell you this, like looking at it from like other, you know, sports perspectives, you know, we can just use the NFL and the college level and the high school level as an example. Like if you're fishing the EQs, I mean, you're fishing the elite series, but with a lot less payouts essentially. And having locals just jump in, I just can't walk on. I mean, I guess I could just walk on to an NCAA team, but it's not going to happen really. But
preferred walk-ons. I think it allow certain people.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of the same concept. So when you got guys out there trying to qualify or trying to make it to the NFL through college or trying to make it to the elites through the EQs, that would make some people a little, you know, ticked off. You know what I mean? So hopefully, and not all change is bad. I think everyone is so scared of change. The change isn't bad, and in fact, I look at the fishing industry over the last 5-10 years, and it's just more and more and more opportunities are out there. I mean, it's saturated, probably not as big as they want it to be, but there's a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things in the fishing industry.
I think that's good and bad, though.
Yeah,
I think you're kind of watering everything down right now, and where you had more sponsor opportunities because there's only, you know, 1 or 2 shows in town essentially. Now you've got a lot more. You've got a lot more circuits within these circuits, and it kind of waters everything down. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. I think if everything is considered special, then nothing is special. And from the financial side, there's only so much money that's going to go around, and like a lot of these local and regional guys are soaking up a lot of sponsorship dollars, and companies look at them at the regional level and say, well, these guys can push a lot of product. Well, you know, like that, there's only so much of it to go around. So I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say
there's good value in that, though. There's always been a place for that as far as the regional stuff. There's a lot of baits and certain things that are very region based too. So like the blueback herring lake region, if you're a good fishermen in that region, there's certain baits and things that excel that you can market well to that specific market. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, like,
absolutely.
You have a lot of value in that specific region. You know, Northeast, the Blueback Lakes, the Florida, the big baits, the Texas, those kind of places. Like, they're all like, there's a lot of regional guys that can get some good sponsor dollars in those certain like little niche areas based on that.
I mean, the whole West Coast almost. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the West Coast, big time.
no one goes over there. So
So saying that, Destin, talking about like saturation isn't always good. Now with the elites and the EQs and the BPT and the Toyotas and the Invitationals and the MPFL and the list goes on and on. Like, what would you what kind of changes would you like to see? Would you like to see less major tournament trails, or what kind of changes do you think may help out with those anglers who are committed to? Oh,
Hold on one second.
no, you're good.
you're
good.
All right, sorry.
No,
Can you
you're
repeat
good.
that,
You're good.
please?
But yeah, I mean, from your perspective, fishing at the top level, like what changes would you like to see made?
In the industry, you're saying?
Yeah.
As far as how that works?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, really, with the opens is like what I said. I think just like having that EQ separate, from the opens would be a good start, or even kind of dispelling the opens, making it the EQs. And now actually the Bass Federation has kind of changed in the sense that the divisionals are going to be more like open tournaments. So you can qualify through, the weekend stuff, but you can also sign up and fish divisionals for a chance to go to nationals.
Yeah.
So it's essentially, to me, could replace that local, regional open type thing.
Well, they used to have the Weekender was a regional, wasn't it? The BASS Weekenders or Weekend Series, whatever they called it.
Yeah. The weekend series was like part of Bass, but now it's split off and it's the ABA.
Yeah. So they're almost bringing that back. If you look at it, like you were saying, Trey brought up sports like baseball, MLB,
The ABA
AA,
is now
AAA.
doing that solo
Yep.
that solo trail, which is also really encouraging. I mean, even at that weekend level, that there's no co-angler, which I don't have a problem with the co-angler, right? That's how I started. But like, especially at the opens level, I don't think you should. At the ABA, that's cool that you have that opportunity to fish solo.
Mm-hmm.
But most local tournaments, I think you still have to have co-anglers and BFLs and all that stuff too.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think there's plenty of room. The BFLs, I think, are let's be honest, any organization is probably trying to come up with the next BFL because that's that's probably the one success story in the MLF. Like, they're making money there. The
Toyotas are good too. I think
Yeah.
the Toyotas help
But-
MLF a lot.
when you
And there's good money in that championship. If
True.
you make the championship, the entry fees are lower. I mean, I've considered doing that too. I used to fish some of those. Northern schedule is really good. They have a lot of really good timing on all their schedules on really good fisheries. So they do some good stuff there for sure.
Mm-hmm. So my last question is, and I don't know if I've ever heard anyone ask this or anything like that, but when you look at the Bassmaster Classic, you got several different ways to get to the Bassmaster Classic. Do you think that should be allowed for anglers outside of the elites to go to essentially the Super Bowl? I mean, when you look at two NFL teams playing against each other in the Super Bowl, you don't get like somebody from college to come up there and play in the Super Bowl with you, right? And I don't want to be like callous about it, but like when you're at the Elite Series or you're at the BPT and you're fishing Red Crest, do you think that others should be able to join that, or do you think that should be exclusive to those on the Elites and the BPT?
That's a good question. And funny enough, I was just talking to my friend Brian Key about that earlier today. He was talking about it as if you're taking classic spots away, from Elite Series guys, which that's a good point. And he was talking about how college is taking those now, and there's a lot of different things that are taking classic spots away potentially from Elite Series guys. I think that's a hard sell. I think that's what draws a lot of people to fish the opens that necessarily don't want to make the elites. That are just fishing them just to make the classic. That's like the carrot to get you to come fish that tournament. Also with the nation, if you don't have the ability to make the classic, somehow through the Bass Nation, it's going to be hard to get guys to fish 25 tournaments locally, regionally, whatever, to go put the time in and the money. And there's not very good payouts in the Bass Nation usually to go to that, to do what you need to do to go to that national and hopefully make the classic through that.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it is. Do I think it's perfect? No, I don't. But I think it's just a hard sell if you're going to not give those spots to those other trails, because that's the carrot that's being dangled to get them to keep fishing it to go on to the.
I think you just
fish the classic with a chance.
You just have to look at what the classic has always been. The classic's never been a championship for the top level of BASS. It's always been the championship for the entirety of the organization, right? So it's all of the best fishermen in BASS, not just the elites, not just the opens, not just the weekends, not just TNT, all the various things. It's been for anybody that fishes the organization. So I think you take away from the organization as a whole and how it was created to give anglers a platform. If you were to take that and just make it for elite guys, you might as well just change it from the classic and say it's the Elite Series Championship at that point.
Yeah, I think the U.S. Open for golf is the same way. I think you can qualify as an amateur because I think that was a big deal this year.
Yeah, somebody finished high enough there and got their pro card because of it.
Yeah, they
cool.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can get like the nation. Does the Bass Nation winner, does he get a spot on the Elite Series, or is it just the classic?
The winner of the national championship gets an invite to the elites. Yes, okay. But if one of the other guys, it's never happened. I don't believe it's ever happened. Would win, they would also get an invite. If you win the classic and you're not in the elites, you would automatically get
you get
an invite to the elites.
Yeah, it's just I think we always try to compare competitive bass fishing to other sports when in reality we just need to define our own narrative. There has to be.
I think golf is similar though.
Yeah.
No structure. I think golf is a very similar one to fishing and how they've laid it out.
Yeah, and if you look at like Red Crest on the MLF side, they've always set that up as the MLF's culminating event, not the BPT, not the Toyota, not the Open, because invitationals or whatever it is now. And then like the MPFL is just their league, so theirs is the championship. They don't have a feeder system. If they did, maybe they would look at it different. It's hard because it's like we talk about it similar to baseball with different leagues, but then the championships are different.
Yeah.
It's kind of its own culture with the way that stuff works. And
it is, yeah.
You would really take away. And there was one person that has won the Classic and got that spot, and that was Brian Kirchhoff.
Who was it?
Brian Kirchhoff.
Did he win the Classic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the only Bass Nation champion to win the Bassmaster Classic. He won it on
he was the champion of the national, though, right? So he'd already... Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, he won both. You're right. So that... Yeah,
but
you're right. So he would have double qualified.
Right, he's the only Bass Nation guy that's ever
won the Classic.
Right.
You know it's funny, Dustin. You know the story of him finding like the worm floating in the lake.
Yes, I do.
So when I was up on Bugs Island, I went back into a pocket and I saw a worm floating in the top of the water, and that was the first thing I thought of. But stupid me, I didn't grab it, and I didn't. I did terrible that turn. I know. I'm never going to do it again. I will always grab a worm that's floating on the water and be like, "Well, it's being thrown for a reason, so I'm going to throw it." So,
or it could because Craig was out there practicing.
I talked to you before and during Bugs Island, didn't I?
Yeah, so Bugs kicked my butt, man. It was one of those things where I didn't have a full plan, a backup plan. And I went out and, the conditions were exactly the same. And this just goes to show you that it's the hardest sport in the world because you're competing against live, organisms. And so I went out and fished probably 30 or 40 brush piles or practiced them and went and hit those same brush piles the next day. And the only thing I caught all day was a 6-inch fish. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know why. But it was my version of the St. Lawrence River this year. You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't work out.
I told you what to throw to win that.
So here's my thing, Dustin. I'm not huge on dock talk. Like, I don't like listening to people.
All you needed was an A-rig.
I may ask advice, but I'm really, and I don't know how it is on the EQs or anything like that, but like, I'm really big on like not listening to people when I'm like, I don't care what you're doing. Like, if you tell me there's a good area, sure, I'll go check it out. But I like to fish my way, and maybe it's biting me in the butt sometimes.
I think it's better to do it that way, honestly. I mean, like, me and a couple of people will talk, occasionally about what's going on, what we're seeing, but we fish so differently that it almost doesn't always really help. It might clue you into what the fish, like the phase they're in or what they're doing, but you got to go figure out that bite on your own, the way that you want to fish it, obviously.
And that's, if you go back and listen to our episode with John Cruz, we talk about, the importance now of the housing and kind of teaming with practice and stuff. And one of their steadfast rules is we don't say where, we don't say what, we say 15. I caught him in 15 foot of water.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece of information you need, and you go figure out how you're going to catch them in 15 foot of water. So much like Trey, I try not to get caught up in dock talk, but there is value there if you're getting information like water depth, or if it's a certain part of the lake, if you have different clarities or wind or things like that. But I always hate when those have got, just go out there and throw that green shaky head, and then you throw a green shaky head and don't get a bite, and it's like, yeah, that was dumb. I should have done what I want to do. And then you find out the guy that beat you was doing exactly what your plan was. Yeah. You're like, well, I should have just done that.
I think that's the biggest thing is like if you get beat doing your own thing, like you can at least be proud that you're doing it. But if you get beat because you listen to everyone else around you and you're like, dadgummit, like I should have done what I did.
That's more frustrating.
Yeah.
And I had an absolutely
definitely more frustrating.
Yeah, I had my season this year.
I've been in that place where I've listened too much. I'm like, why did I do that?
Yeah. I did it all year this year. I listened to everybody and didn't do what I like to do, and I had an absolute terrible tournament fishing season this year. Yeah. And next year I'm just going to do what I want to do.
You got to stick with what your strength is, or strengths, and apply it to the fishery and what they're doing, and just commit. I mean, and a lot of times it's live scope now and scoping and stuff deep. Just finding stuff offshore.
Yeah.
I'll also say that learning to use live scope during a tournament is not the time to do it.
Oh, no.
Ask me how I know. I always intend to go out and do it in the off season, but then they get shallow and just too much fun on a square bill.
There's always fish deep, isn't there, Destin? There's always fish that are deep.
There is.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
So, Destin, appreciate you coming on. I don't know if you guys have any other questions. We've taken up a bunch of his time. He's got wife and daughter ready for dad time and husband time. Before we go, would you just want to give the opportunity, as always, to shout out, your sponsors and those that help you do what you do, as well as plug your socials. And for anybody listening, I'll have his socials also linked down below, so you can get them down there in the description.
Cool. Well, yeah, if you got them down there, I'll just let them look down there. But shout out to DurEdge for sure. My title sponsor for a long time. Also my job. We install infield mix and manufacture it for baseball fields. X2 batteries, Rabbit Bait. They're a sponsor of the Toyota series, actually the Northern Toyotas. Turwit Team Realty. We've been together for a few years, and Centimark Corporation, commercial roofing.
You got any new sponsors coming or no? No.
I'm talking to one.
So that's what. So Destin has good relationships with good companies when you're not like sponsor shopping that much, and so, and that's what we love about you, man. Like you're just a good dude. You know, I think that's like,
I don't know about all that, but I appreciate that.
that's lesson, dude. That's lesson 101 for anybody. Just be a good human being. It goes a long way. We definitely appreciate you joining us, Destin. Let us take some of your time.
Of course, I always enjoy talking to you guys. It's just like hanging out with my bud. So
that's right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
We definitely appreciate it. I do have a question for you, but I'll ask it when we get offline here.
Oh, it's an offline question.
It's an offline question. So
Is that? Oh man,
yeah.
It's getting serious.
how bad is this?
It's hard to say, but everybody listening, we appreciate y'all. Like we said, the onset. This will be the 47th week we've put an episode out. Destin was number 5. He was episode number 5. I went back and counted just to confirm my thoughts were right in my head, and they were. So we appreciate all the support. Yeah, I know. Make sure you go down below, check out the sponsors that are down there that help us do the show. You hear us read ads and stuff, but supporting them also helps support us, helps us keep doing this, helps us be able to bring you more stuff like we did with the NPFL and all that. So we really appreciate everybody's support. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Really helpful if you leave a review. We read all of those. We do have a big giveaway coming, and I know I keep talking about it. I promise you it is number 1 on my list this week. We're going to put together how we're going to do that. We're also going to draw for the Carolina Waters for October. Appreciate everybody that screenshot and sent me those invoices, so we'll get that done. Like Trey said, just be a good person. Help us continue to grow a culture of anglers helping anglers, one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.